Welcome to the Belonging Project podcast. This is Fiorenza and I'm your host. The purpose of this podcast is to bring voices together to talk about belonging. Through inspiring, real-life conversations, we explore how belonging can show up in so many different ways, what it feels like to belong, and the impact of truly belonging. Each episode will offer you inspiration and practical strategies to find your true voice in your life and as a leader. Let's dive in. Hi everyone. Hi Zora. Welcome to the Belonging Project podcast. I'm super excited today. We have Zora with us. Hi Zora.
Hello there, Fiorenza.
Very nice to have you today. And you're calling in from Zurich, is that right?
Yes, Zurich, Switzerland. It is a cloudy day today. Happy autumn.
Same in London, I'm afraid. Even had a bit of rain. So yes, I hear you. So Zora, you are a behavior disruptor. And I would love to hear from you what that exactly means as a starting point, if that's all right.
Thanks for the question. I think this is a combination of somebody who is a corporate psychologist. So I have worked for 20 years as a psychologist in big multinational companies. Also in HR as people teams, in the people teams. And then I've been coaching a lot of executives, leadership teams to change behaviors and change cultures. So the best word to describe what I do is disrupt. I disrupt and then I elevate. And I focus on the single behavior that needs to change. Yeah. So that's why I call myself a behavior disruptor.
Fantastic. And just before we started to record, you were telling me about how it's a journey really, and how you are there for this change journey with the clients that you work with. I very much like this concept of journey.
Well, here's the thing. Within my 20 years, I noticed how when leaders experienced executive coaching, they would go in, vent, and come out. And again, go in, vent, and come out. But there was no continuity when they were receiving that from external partners. The kind of continuity for them and the kind of tangible, what is changing exactly? It was not clear there, at least not clear enough for them to express then to me and say, hey, this is what I'm working on and this is what I'm changing. So that was then very clear on my end. How I take my clients on a journey is not through sessions. You can't book 5 or 10 sessions with Zora. What we will do first is to understand what's the thing in your life that's the most painful. And what is the cost of that pain in your life? And then we look at what is the kind of gain you want to have in your life, and what is then the change that will lead to there. And usually that is a behavior change. And I'll tailor a journey for you, which is specific to your needs and whatever that one behavior would be. So that's what I do. I build tailor-made change journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic. And is it really the kind of the length then that would be a big factor to take into account for the journey tailoring?
This is the good part of people like me. I'm not a therapist. I'm a psychologist, but not a therapist. So my aim is not to keep you in the system as long as, I don't know, here in Switzerland, it's 15 times. My aim is to help disrupt and elevate so that and deliver measurable change in your life. And then afterwards, you are equipped to move forward and operate on that elevated level. My interventions usually last maximum 3 months. That's it. Not 3 years of therapy.
Yeah. And that is actually quite a short amount of time, right? For
Correct.
People to really ground themselves and understand what's, firstly, what is it that they want to change, and then to actually get to that change.
Correct, because I often describe my sessions as a workout. You come to the gym with me, and you probably need a personal trainer for the first 3 months to start showing up to the gym and doing your movements right. But afterwards, you have the muscle and the techniques that you can take it on on your own. So the 3 months is short, but within that 3 months, I'll be able to disrupt and elevate and intervene in a way that you are equipped to move on by yourself afterwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as you may know, I'm a coach, and I definitely see the need of having, that journey. And, with some clients, having a coaching journey completely makes sense. And I think, exactly to your point, that's, really how you get as a client to get, well, firstly, get the most out of the intervention, but also you get to be accountable to yourself, and you get to see exactly what is it that you're changing or you're adding, or that you're getting ready to let go of. And the other thing I'm going to say with that, and that's probably part of the coaching interventions in organizations, what I'm seeing is that people would come, so some leaders would come to coaching with probably a list of different things that they want help, and that we will work on. And so with that in mind, I think with that type of intervention, it's very useful, because it means that you had that list of topics bottled up, and you had nobody really to kind of do the work on that at that point in time where it matters to you. But then it's not a journey. It's more like very kind of topical things most of the time, where people need a sounding boards or, to brainstorm some ideas. So different kind of case scenario probably. But yes, I'm a big believer in journeys. I'm in the journey type of intervention. So I'm really glad you're doing this work and impacting so many.
Yeah, and I think when you do it as a journey, as an intervention, which has a red thin line in it, you make it also measurable. Then when you nail it down into one single behavior that we are agreeing and contracting on working on together, we make a starting point for that behavior, and then we'll measure it along the way and describe what are the ways that we are experimenting and exploring with it. How are we practicing? Kind of a big passion of mine is neuroscience. So how are we rewiring and reprogramming our mindset, our kind of inner narratives and responses in the right way? So that is why I also believe that the kind of measurability becomes more possible when you create a journey. If you have just single sessions, no magic or healings happen in single sessions. At least I can't do healing in single sessions, but I can help change behavior in 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find that there are some behaviors specifically that people keep coming to you for, that they want to change?
Interestingly enough, one of them is, which is also very typical in toxic cultures, is blame. And it's not so much that they practice blame, but they feel blamed, and they don't know really how to handle that. And when we dive deeper into that, it's usually coming from quite early on. So this kind of experience of blame has been experienced early on in life. And one of the key parts there that I help my clients with is, I often say, where there is blame, there's no boundaries. So then we start looking into what are the boundaries and how do we start setting healthy boundaries, and move from blame talk to boundary talk, because those who experience a lot of blame have also very harsh inner narratives that might have been there, decades or even more. So how do we help change those narratives, change the kind of emotional triggers for that, but really start looking on the behavioral change of setting boundaries? So that kind of is one of the, especially with toxic cultures and toxic teams, that's one of the most typical one, I would say.
Yeah. And do you find that your clients are surprised that a behavior or, something, an emotion that they're experiencing in the workplace is coming from childhood?
Well, probably when they come to me knowing I'm a psychologist, they know I'll go there. They know I'm going to start digging. And here's the thing. I use a lot of so that's maybe the benefit that I can offer is I'm not a therapist, but I will utilize my psychological kind of knowledge and know-how. So I bring methods like cognitive behavior therapy in. We do some imaging and kind of like leverage memories from the past in a very non-re-traumatizing way, but so that me as the kind of coach or the guide for the journey, I become very sober of what the person's journey has been so far. Do you know what personality means in Latin?
No.
Mask.
Persona? No, I don't know.
It means mask.
Okay.
Personality. I come from Finland, so I know nothing about Latin, but this is what I've learned. Personality means mask, and basically it's the mask we have built in the past years to really just kind of survive in this world. And yeah, it's those beliefs we've built, those narratives we've built to sometimes please and fit into to the environment. Then again, identity is something we can build. And my approach is quite Jungian. So Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, said, you are not what happened to you, but you are what you want to become. Mm-hmm. So identity is the one that you then start to craft.
Yes.
So I understand some approaches focus only on that side, like what do we want to change? But I will kind of fearlessly take you on a journey from the very start, whatever you want to share with me or my clients. And that's where my maybe psychological knowledge helps to make it in a safe way, but also then effectively. So I know what are the things, how do I want to build the journey so that it will address those maybe topics that have been experienced before in the previous years.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us those details. Just wanted to get back on what you mentioned about personality. So with that philosophy, are we, or rather with that school of thought, are we saying that when we're born, it's a blank slate, so personality isn't intrinsic?
Yeah, well, you could say that we it's the question of nature or nurture. What comes first? Do we come out as a blank slate, and then it's only through nurture that we develop it, or do we already inherit some characteristics from our parents? So I personally believe it's both, but the environment starts to very quickly build additional layers, like onion layers of your personality as you experience maybe hardships. Let's imagine somebody goes through a parental divorce, or they go through bullying at school, or death of someone. These start to create then the way they cope with these events start to also shape a bit their personality, and how they kind of mask themselves. And then at some point, this goes up to around 10 years, kind of, this is like almost like the basic programming that happens in all of us up to 10 years. But we never really unwire that. Then life gets busy, you get to the school, you get to the universities or whatever professions you do, your relationship starts, but you never get to a place where you really say, okay, what are these early year wirings, but also later on, how does the onion look like if I cut it through?
Yeah.
And which one serves me still and which one doesn't? And at that point, many people only at the age of maybe 50 start asking that. And that is great, because there's still so much great years to come ahead. But imagine if we would do that already earlier while the onion is growing, and saying, okay, which kind of layers of this onion serve me going further and which don't.
Thank you, Zora. This is a great way of looking at it. Really appreciate that. couple of weeks ago, I believe you had written a post on LinkedIn about leadership and how there could be some toxic behaviors that prevent belonging to happen in the workplace, and also that there could be some positive behaviors that really promote belonging. I'd love to move into that, if that's okay, and get a little bit more of your thoughts on that. Perhaps we could start with, what would you say is belonging in the workplace?
Brené Brown describes the difference between belonging and fitting in being the opposite, where you kind of nip and tuck pieces of yourself and leave them at home because you feel, you know what, it's a bit too risky to bring these parts to the workplace or to even a relationship or wherever you are. So the way I often describe belonging is by describing the opposite. The opposite is that fitting in, the cookie cutter, where you feel like bits and pieces of me are not okay, and therefore I will make myself maybe small to make other people around me okay with me, versus belonging, where you feel, you know what, this environment embraces and accepts and welcomes me just the way I am, and also has the most genuine intent. If I screw up, they will know that, and they will accept my mistakes, and all sorts of messy moments, and I still am safe here. So fitting in for me is a place of unsafety, where you don't show up and maybe more shut up. And belonging is where you show up and speak up and come across as the true you.
And with belonging, you feel safe to bring all the pieces of you with you and to be you, right, within that group and that environment.
Correct. So like that onion that I described earlier, you probably are not going to slice it and talk through your whole childhood if you are in a work environment, but you feel kind of comfortable enough maybe to disclose, hey, my loved one is going through a severe sickness, and that's really troublesome for me, or maybe you disclose another part of you and some of those layers. In an unsafe environment, you don't. You kind of put the onion aside and you come as the cookie cutter and say, right, I'm here. I'm just gonna show whatever you want me to see. So that's definitely, the safety is a key driver in that belonging.
Absolutely. All right. So that's what belonging could look like, or looks like, in the workplace. And we touched on fitting in. And yes, the work of Brené Brown on this is, I really like it. And the examples are very tangible in her work, which I think is quite a strength. So now, if we bring in the leadership element, what have you seen leaders not to do, right? So what have you seen them do that prevented belonging? And what have you seen them do that promoted belonging?
Well, the way I look at it is belonging is coupled with vulnerability-based trust. So if you doubt to speak up, if you feel like it's risky here to ask for help, or say, I don't know, or say, you know what, I screwed up, or I can't take it on anymore. So if there is this kind of doubt that I will be badly received, then even belonging gets hard, because you feel like, okay, I can be myself here, but I better just keep my mouth shut and kind of, you bring your onion in, but you don't show up anything of it. But if you build that, and that's the best leaders that I work with, if they can move into a place where people feel it's safe to speak up and start to feel that it's not a risk to be fully yourself in the team, and usually it's before people start to show their onions and kind of peel off layers, if we can bring them to be open with each other and speaking up instead of shutting up, that's already a big step towards that journey towards belonging. And best leaders that I work with who had environments perhaps where there was silence. I mean, I've entered many meeting rooms where there was crickets. You would ask a question from the team or probe or whatever, and then you hear this kind of awkward cricket sound and nobody dares to speak up. And for me, this is a clear sign what's going on. And seeing that change by a leader who helps to reassure and recognize the first early attempts of people who then choose to speak up and does not retaliate or allow the team to retaliate. I think those are critically key in moving from fitting in to belonging and promoting that. So that those are the, again, behavior. So a leader who recognizes and creates space for people to be brave to speak up. And when one does that, they are very quick to recognize that. And also leaders who speak up about themselves and say, you know what, has been a really rough week and I haven't been the best version of myself. I'm sorry if I've come across as edgy and but I want to let you know that I acknowledge that.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us some examples. I guess there are also times where people don't feel like they are safe to talk or to write up any ideas, any even concerns. Yet nothing has been explicitly said by the leader or the team that would make them feel that way. It's very much everything is unseen and it's about the subtitles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's, I often ask people, is trust, what is trust? And is it a decision? Is it an emotion? And can you force somebody to trust? Probably not. And interestingly enough, there's a part in our brain that is in charge of trust, and it's a hormonal reaction to the lack of fear. So when oxytocin is being released in your body, you will start to feel trust. And the easiest way of that is by touching, by hugging, high fives. Those are the kind of like instant boosts of oxytocin. But if your body is flooded by cortisol, so the stress hormone, it's like a light switch. You can't have both of them on, because the part of the body that is, or brain, that is in charge of secreting oxytocin is also in charge of giving the charges for cortisol. So yeah. If the cortisol is on, too bad. So sorry, there's nothing, the trust hormone is not coming out. So we all know those moments when we are fully stressed and somebody tells us, just trust me, you know what? And you're like, I often say to the leaders, biologically, this person cannot trust you. So just stop saying that. It's not helpful nor biologically possible. So I think that is the part where, yeah, you often just have this feeling that I can't trust. And that's basically a biological response of you experiencing a threat.
Yes.
And therefore, it's not something you can name, because the part of the brain where that happens is an emotional, the limbic brain, and that's tacit. So there's no language attached to that.
Mm-hmm. And it could be harder then perhaps to articulate when that is what's going on, to articulate actually what is going on and to express our needs. Would that be true?
Yes, because again, I think whoever is in a place of stress, it's a fight, flight, fawn, or freeze kind of a response. Your mind is trapped in a kind of an alarm loop in that emotional brain. And in order for you to go more into the kind of neocortex, into the place where logical reasoning happens, you'll need to first find a way, how do you relax your body? And how do you kind of get out of that alarm kind of caveman saber-tooth tiger mode. So that's why it's hard to then explain in those moments what is it that you need. And some leaders then get frustrated, like, tell me what is it that you need, and I'll do whatever, instead of saying, how do I help this person just breathe and relax? How do I help them feel safe with me? And that might take some time. But yeah, when you have leaders who are also stressed, then you have a little kind of pyramid effect right there.
And if the person who is in that moment experiencing, the cortisol, the stress because of, unspoken type of environment, if they manage to get themselves out of that stress or fear zone, is it enough? Could they actually lead change?
I think here's the good part of this, that what kind of a conversations does a leader need to have with their teams? So often you say, okay, performance conversation, right? You have that. Some leaders have them monthly, some have them twice a year, or some only once a year.
Yes.
Tick the box, you've done it. Wonderful. Well done. Then you have your goal setting. Again, maybe that's a different conversation. Some people some leaders fuse it into one. Then you might have disciplinary one, not really fun ones, right? And then you could have also well-being conversations, which are very different ones, which are those who act as vitamin at times. So how do we help people have a well-being conversation early on before anything happens, to understand, so the leader understands this is what this individual needs not to get into that place even, or this is what collectively my team needs. And that can be like a collective conversation even. But then you have well-being conversations as medicine when something has happened and you want to understand, okay, so how do we get you out of this, and then make sure that we maintain your well-being going further. So I think if leaders create a culture of discussing and being open about well-being, absolutely, somebody who has gone through maybe a burnout or breakdown or some stress-related symptoms or whatever well-being related topics could definitely be a leader and ambassador of that within a team. And those are often the most powerful ones. But that, again, requires safety.
Yes.
Because if you don't feel safe to disclose in a team, like, I'm having really hard time and my marriage is breaking because of all of this. And I don't know, I don't sleep anymore. So if you don't feel safe, then you probably don't want to disclose nor to lead anything in a team like that.
And we were talking earlier how safety and feeling safe links with trust, right? And trust links with belonging. Is it possible to move the switch on this? If we don't feel safe, could something, be done so that we feel safe? Is that possible?
Of course, there are individuals who have had bad experiences and come into a workplace with narratives and bruises from the previous workplaces. So that's a different kind of a way of a leader to look into, is this more of a symptom or a trait? So if this is a symptom of what's happening in the team, then I as a leader need to look into creating safety for everyone here. Or is this more of an individual kind of trait or of this individual that he or she has gone through this before and therefore they don't feel safe in this team? I'll then more intervene and support this individual. But very often, if it's more of a symptom of a larger issue, then I often say that the toxic cultures and unsafe cultures start from the boardroom. Because if the CEO is not being seen as the person who guards and protects and shields that safety and creates that environment where it's safe to speak up and show up, the lower levels won't either.
Yes. So work needs to be done on the collective, I'm hearing, but needs very much to happen with the leader, right?
Yeah.
And I've been working with some individuals that can really suffer from behaviors that their leader can have. And things that they would tell me is they don't see it. They don't see it as being an issue. People have raised it to them, but they don't care, right? They don't see it, they don't care, they're too busy, it's not their priority. Do you have any tips in terms of what one individual, just part of the team, could do to help their leader?
Yeah. This is a $1 million question. How long do you hang out in an environment where your leader is just toxic? Yes. Because if they are toxic, they are allowed to be toxic, and either consciously or unconsciously. So somebody above is still paying the salary, rewarding and bonuses, whatnots. So I think it's $1 million question to say, you know what is the accountability of employees to yes, approach leaders as well as humans and raise topics, whether it's directly as a feedback if you are brave and feel safe, or whether it's in engagement surveys that people hope that, okay, maybe through here people read something. But I personally think life is so bloody short. And there is imagine an environment where you actually can feel you belong. Imagine an environment where your leader is the biggest promoter of you and creates that safety and helps you to start open up your kind of layers of onion, and you feel like you are breathing at ease with your leader and your team. So I personally, I think it's a due diligence for everyone to give feedback and raise topics. I think that is when you can also elegantly leave the company afterwards saying, you know what, I raised it, and if nothing changes, changing a toxic culture needs to be changed all the way from the up. So bottom up, it's gonna take a long time. So I would then say, okay, so how do we start building for you a plan B that becomes maybe the best change in your life that you ever did? Yes. Looking back, when you've left a toxic environment, it always made sense, and you wonder why did I stay for such a long time?
So what I'm hearing is that it very much depends on each individual, right? So perhaps, for one person, it's about raising it once, and then they've reached their internal quota and maybe they're ready to move on. Others, it could be raising it 3 times or 4 times, and then they're ready to move on. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I think here's the thing. Like I said, I think as a human to human, we have the accountability to offer each other help. So maybe you and I, we work together, and I was, some of my behaviors were really rubbing you wrong way. I would really love you to share that with me. And I think that would be great that you showed me that humanity and gave me that feedback, so I can change. But if I didn't, then I would also kind of message to you what I think the value of your feedback is. And I've seen teams and environments and companies where then employees try to escalate through different routes and several conversations, and then they talk with HR, but it's all in that same vacuum then of toxic leadership. If leaders like that are allowed to kind of flourish in a company, then yeah, you can try it once, try it 5 times, try it 10 times, but like I said, life is short. It's going to be a bit like with the relationships, life is short. You'll need to approach it as well in a way from as long as you try to repair, as long as you are brave enough to show the vulnerability and not blame anyone or blame the leader, but show the vulnerability and say, you know what, this really hurts me, and I would really love for you to be aware how this behavior of you is coming across to me, and maybe giving them the benefit of, I know it's not your intent, but the impact in me is so and so. I think this is both privately and professionally, that's what we can do. But if people continuously keep on stepping over us, it's our job to create the boundaries. And sometimes the boundary is to continue and move on.
Absolutely. And we've dropped the toxic word a few times here.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly? What's, what needs to be present so that we can say an environment is toxic or a leader is toxic?
I often ask the question, what's the opposite of toxic? What is the opposite of toxic for you, is my question.
I would say, for me personally, I feel like the opposite, at least the first thing that comes to mind is nurturing.
Yes. So nurturing, and many often say safe, or supportive, engaging, inclusive. And when I look at what toxic creates, it creates fragility, basically. It creates corrosion or it kills a plant, an animal or living being, or starts to corrode an entity. It creates fragility. So for me, the opposite of that is anti-fragility. So creating anti-fragile cultures. And that is also the difference, what I've noticed when I talk with CEOs. If I talk about using words like nurturing or supportive or engaging or inclusive, some CEOs will listen to me and say, great, you go and do that. Why don't you? But when I start to package it more into anti-fragile, saying, your toxic culture is creating for you fragility that will impact your business. You are losing talent. This is how many, and this is how much it's costing you. And right now, if you want to change that into more anti-fragile, which is good for your business and for your boardroom up there, this is what we can do. So for me, that is kind of how I describe the toxicity, but also the kind of opposite. And where does the anti-fragility come from? I went to MIT in Boston for a course, and there was Bill Ollett, who's a mastermind when it comes to entrepreneurship. And he said any startup or bigger enterprise needs to be anti-fragile. And this is how you build it. And then he describes this whole methodology, how do you build anti-fragile companies. And I left MIT in Boston with that word in mind, and I said, this is it. This is the kind of, if the mecca of tech in Boston talks about this being the core, then that means that the cultures need to also become anti-fragile. And toxic cultures are not that.
Yes, very much the opposite. Absolutely. That is quite a fresh take, I would say. I very much resonate with that concept of anti-fragile. What's been the resonance you've observed or you noticed with your clients? Does that kind of resonate with most?
Sticks more with especially with business C-suite and CEOs. That sticks better than the more soft ways of talking about the culture, because that directly dives into their P&L. So if I start to talk about, so because of your fragile culture, you are losing this much of talent. How are you explaining that to your boardroom? And what are your kind of actions to create anti-fragile cultures, so that you don't actually need to have a conversation with the boardroom? Has a different type of a tone, the conversation.
It is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Zora. This was a really refreshing conversation, and it's great to define, right, some of those terms and some of those words that we use so much. But really take this time to perhaps take a step back and define and share ideas. And thank you so much, Zora.
Thank you, Fiorenza, for inviting me, and it's always such a cool and conversation to have and reflect on these kind of topics all together. and help people understand what can be done and what can't be done, and how do you kind of at times help lead change within a toxic culture, and at times you vote with your feet and you do the best what is for you after you've tried to do what is best for the company. So there's a boundary right there.
We have to advocate for ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
We owe it to ourselves. Yeah.
Correct. If we don't, who will?
Thank you, Zora. And we'll add your details on the show notes page of this episode, so people can get in touch and perhaps carry on the conversation as well.
Lovely. Would love to. And thank you, Fiorenza. It was lovely to be your guest here.
Thank you so much, Zora.
You can follow the podcast on LinkedIn at the Belonging Project Podcast. You can also hit subscribe and stay up to date with our episodes. And do feel free to get in touch with me on coaching@fiorenzarossini.com. Thank you again, and see you next time.